Welcome to session 6 of Better Conversations. In this session, we'll be discussing toxic conversations and what we can do to better navigate these types of conversations, starting with finding common ground. We have so much more in common than our differences, but it is often our differences that divide us. No matter what your bumper stickers on your car say, we have more in common than we have different. But if we start conversations with our differences, we will never get to better conversations. So when I think about walking into a teacher's room, I look for something that we have in common. It could be the pennant they have hanging on their wall, or a poster, the books, the watch on their wrists, a photo of their kids, something common that connects us. And finding common ground can be difficult, though, because our normal habit in life is to develop a quick belief about a situation and then seek out information that bolsters that belief. So this tendency to seek out support for our own beliefs is a major reason people do not easily see what they hold in common with other people. Jim Knight gives us some tips on conversational shortcuts in order to find common ground. And he uses this acronym, I CARE. So first is interest. You can look for shared interests, and they open the door to conversations. Books, TV shows, music, sports teams, even restaurants. Then convictions. These are firmly held beliefs that give an insight into who someone is as a person. Shared activities, something that you can do together. So watching a show, an escape room, ice cream, karaoke, icebreakers. Then the R is for roles and responsibilities. If you are a teacher and you meet another teacher, you have established a commonality instantly. So other people may not understand you as much as another teacher does because you instantly have something that connects you. And then finally, experiences. We both, hiked the Grand Canyon. We both did the pub crawl in July. Or we both know so-and-so. These are shortcuts. And remember, consciously working to make connections is not this manipulative thing. We're not trying to find this thing in common so we can trick someone into liking us. It is about establishing connection by being clear on aspects in life that we share. So when you find common ground, you end up having great conversations that you never forget. And you realize that human beings are way more alike than we are different. Sometimes, though, no matter what we do, we wind up in a conversation that has become toxic. Sometimes they happen quickly, and they happen in such speed that we're often unprepared for them. So someone makes a questionable comment, they raise their voice, they raise their body language, they do something that prevents a better conversation. And sometimes it's us. I tell my kids all the time, you are allowed to feel all of your emotions. In fact, you should. Emotions are your body trying to tell you something, but it's how we respond to those emotions that set us apart. Jim Knight says we should start with identifying what types of conversations we think are unacceptable. So what are the types of conversations that I will not allow to happen near me? They may be racist comments, homophobic comments, sexist comments. It could be hallway conversations that are almost like microaggressions. They could be dehumanizing comments about students or staff. What are the types of conversations that you want to stop? And we make a list so that when they happen, we are ready for them. And this includes recognizing when we might be in a situation where we might react emotionally. If we can recognize situations, topics, or even people that might trigger an emotional response in us, we will be better able to maintain control of how we respond to our emotions if we do indeed feel prodded or provoked. If recognizing the toxic situation is part one, then the harder part is stopping those toxic conversations when they happen. So Jim Knight gives us some tips when it comes to avoiding toxic conversations. One of them is simply interrupting the conversation. You can say, oh, hey, look, I gotta go. I'm running late. And you can interrupt the conversation. You can remove yourself from it. The second is naming it. So the second thing you can do is you can name it. So you can say, I just want to check and see if I have this right. What I hear you saying is you don't think, and then name what it is they're saying. So you don't think women are qualified to take on leadership roles just by virtue of their gender. And often when you name it, what you're really saying in either subtle or sarcastic ways, you will redirect the conversation for you. Right? And, they might respond to it, no, that's not what I mean. And if they agree with your statement after you name it, you can respond to that as well. You can say, well, that is sexist and I don't agree with it. A third strategy is correcting. Sometimes you just have to correct what is going on. So somebody will say something and you'll say, actually, here's what the facts are. I was at that meeting and here's what they actually said. You could divert as well, sometimes diverting the conversation. If someone is gossiping about another person and you change the subject, you could say, hey, did you hear about the, scholarship that Joe Schmo and their daughter got to MU? And you move on. And silence. Sometimes you just walk away from a conversation, and it can be very powerful when someone says something distasteful and they were expecting you to respond or laugh, and instead you are silent or you give no response at all. You want the message to be, around me, this type of conversation isn't allowed. This is probably, this topic of redirecting toxic conversations is probably the hardest part on our journey towards better conversations. But we cannot have a better conversation if that conversation involves some of those elements of a toxic conversation.